Welcome to the Minnesota Transportation Museum's podcast series on the history of rail and bus transportation in the Upper Midwest. Our podcast series is brought to you with funding provided by a Minnesota Historical Society Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund partnership grant. Watch as we see the important role railroad depots played in the growth of Minnesota's cities and frontier. In its heyday, Minnesota railroading was home to hundreds of depots. Some were grandiose, many were architecturally stunning, and some were downright utilitarian. Even though major passenger railroading is now handled by Amtrak, the depots that survive from days gone by have very interesting and varied backgrounds. The Minnesota Transportation Museum is fortunate to have several depots of varying historical interest. Owned by the Minnesota Historical Society and operated seasonally by volunteers of the Minnesota Transportation Museum, the Princess Depot, otherwise known as the Minnehaha Depot, is near Minnehaha Falls Park, just off State Highway 55 in South Minneapolis. The Princess Depot is perhaps the most accessible depot that the museum operates, although you may not even know it exists. It's off the beaten path, south of downtown Minneapolis, and almost hidden from view by the highway barrier walls. As far as railroad structures are concerned, this hidden gem is a stunningly beautiful structure, with ornate Victorian woodwork on its delicate gingerbread canopy. This attention to detail by its builders from the Milwaukee Road earned it the nickname, the Princess Depot. Taking a step inside is to take an exquisite step back in time to what railroad travel was like in Minnesota in the late 1800s. Built by the Milwaukee Road in 1875 to replace an earlier non-permanent structure, visitors encounter history as passengers once experienced the golden age of rail travel. In the depot's early years, Minneapolis residents flocked to Minnehaha Park via train to enjoy picnicking and summer weekends. This depot provided the first railway link between Minneapolis and Chicago as well. Today's visitors can experience the inside of the Princess Depot on weekends between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Since the depot is still in its original location, the visitor can imagine what the area looked like more than 100 years ago. Aside from Highway 55 nearby, the landscape is relatively unchanged. The tracks at Minnehaha Depot have been removed because of the new right-of-way for Highway 55, but you can still see the original right-of-way just north of the depot along Highway 55 by the grain elevators. In addition to the Princess Depot in South Minneapolis, the Minnesota Transportation Museum also owns the Rutledge Depot, located at the museum's Jackson Street Roundhouse just north of downtown St. Paul, Minnesota. The Rutledge Depot comes from the small town of Rutledge, which is in Pine County, Minnesota, about 40 miles south of Duluth. Rutledge was on Northern Pacific's St. Paul to Duluth main line, which today is a state bicycle trail. The museum also owns the Bayport Depot in Bayport, Minnesota. Located just south of Stillwater on the St. Croix River, the depot is unrestored and in storage away from its original site. The Minnesota Transportation Museum's Interstate Scenic Railroad, the Osceola and St. Croix Valley Railway, operates a scenic railroad that has several interesting and significant depots. The main depot in Osceola, Wisconsin, showcases a true operating depot serving a localized community with a ticket agent office, passenger waiting room, and freight and baggage service. The Dresser, Wisconsin depot, also on the Osceola and St. Croix Valley Railway, was recently restored and is open for our visitors to explore and plays host to some of our seasonal events. As the train travels into Minnesota, riders pass by the site of the Copus Depot, which serviced the community at Copus. Finally, the train stops just outside of the town of Marine on St. Croix, where there was also once a bustling depot. Today, all that remains is a station sign and some foundation walls of the depot. Minnesota's railroad depots have closely followed the course of railroad passenger service. Once the preeminent public face of railroads in Minnesota, existing depots are few and far between. That is why the Minnesota Transportation Museum's collection of restored and operational depots is truly an achievement of historical significance. please take a moment to visit one or all of the museum's depots.